I've been a fan of South Park since the first few seasons, and it's still one of my favorite TV shows today. I recently finished playing South Park: The Fractured But Whole, and replayed The Stick of Truth to compare the two games for this video. I will compare what I liked and disliked about the two games, while sharing what I want to see if we ever get another game to round out the trilogy. The Fractured But Whole was developed by Ubisoft San Francisco and South Park Digital Studios, while The Stick of Truth was developed by Obsidian Entertainment, known for producing other RPGs like Fallout New Vegas. Upon hearing that the sequel was changing developers, I was hesitant because I thought that the game would lose many of the RPG elements that Obsidian brought to the table. Or, worst yet, the game would just be a cash grab playing off the success of the first game. I will be comparing the two games by specifically looking at their combat system, story, and other features that give you my point of view of which game was better in those areas. First, let's start with the combat. I love JRPGs with traditional turn-based combat, but I have to say, hands down that the combat in The Fractured But Whole was superior. At first, I was annoyed that some attacks can only hit the target if you are directly in front or behind the enemy, while not being able to target enemies in the cell above or below your character. However, after unlocking more allies and powers of your own, I began to take advantage of this mechanic to protect my allies, and I appreciated the added strategy it provided. Where your character ends up after an attack will be important, as taking damage from multiple enemies can easily take a character down. The combat is also improved by the overall harder difficulty compared to The Stick of Truth. In the first game, even after adjusting to the hardest difficulty, I had no problem killing enemies in one hit, and even boss battles didn't pose a threat. With the added challenge, I also utilized different powers and party members compared to The Stick of Truth, where I only used one support character throughout most of the game. You'll spend considerably more time in the combat with The Fractured But Whole, with a variety of different objectives to keep it fresh, even if you stick with the same party members. Next, I'll compare the story. The Fractured But Whole picks up right where The Stick of Truth leaves off, and some aspects such as the kid's backstory are further explored. This time around, the main story is about the Coon and friends and their rivals, the Freedom Pals, looking for a lost cat to claim a $100 reward. While there is a bigger plot and villain of the story, I have to say that The Stick of Truth had a more cohesive and interesting story. While The Stick of Truth was about half its length, at about 12 hours, compared to its sequel, you also have to take into account that the map and many locations are reused from the original game. Apart from the main story, relative for the length of the game, The Stick of Truth had more side quests that were more fun and memorable, such as going into Canada. The Fractured But Whole tries to balance classic South Park characters like Dr. Mephisto, while also adding new things from the most recent seasons since the release of the previous game, like the Member Berries or Tweek and Craig's Yaoi art, which keeps it from feeling too familiar. I actually would enjoy playing a South Park game every couple of years, with a new story and references from the new seasons of the show. That's one thing I like about the show. Characters change and major events happen that affect the rest of the season, unlike other animated shows that always end up the same way it began. The last thing I will cover are the extras and additional features. This one is a hard one because both games had their strengths. One example is comparing the use of social media to make friends. The Instagram-inspired Coonstagram is superior to the generic Facebook page. You can read messages from Coonstagram that pop up on your screen, unlike the original, which had you constantly opening up the menu each time you got a message. It was also more satisfying to take selfies to add friends, and I also swapped costumes more often than I thought I would to change my appearance. There is a lot of flexibility to change everything about your character in The Fractured But Whole, from gender to sexual orientation. One thing that didn't work as well was the crafting and powering up of your character. I preferred the way The Stick of Truth provided weapons and weapon mods to increase your stats, while the sequel has you equipped artifacts that increase your might, which increase your overall attributes. I personally loved collecting weapons in The Stick of Truth and how it looked on my character. The Stick of Truth also had skill points you could invest in abilities and perks like a more traditional RPG. Performance-wise, the sequel looks better and runs smoother with fewer load times. Another thing that worked better in The Stick of Truth was how you collected junk items. In that game, when you opened up containers, you would see all the items and select a button to collect all of them. This gave me the time to read junk items and their references to the show. In The Fractured But Whole, the junk items that can be used for crafting are automatically collected and shown in the upper right corner of the screen, which is just really easy to miss. The reason I felt that the crafting component was a weaker part of the second game was that there was not many things to craft, and junk resources are so plentiful that it doesn't feel rewarding from the start. Personally, I enjoyed both games and it's hard to say which one is better. They both have their strengths and weaknesses due to the different developers at the helm. Overall, The Fractured But Whole had better combat and gameplay, but The Stick of Truth had better story moments and references to the show for longtime fans. Regardless, if you are a fan of the show like I am, the time spent on both games will be worthwhile. You don't even need to find a copy of The Stick of Truth if you plan on playing it first, as it is included for free as a DLC code if you purchase a new copy of The Fractured But Whole. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Which one did you enjoy more? Would you be excited to play another South Park game? And who would you like to see develop the next one?